The rain fell in thin, cold sheets over the city that night, streaking the lobby's glass doors and reflecting the warm gold glow of the hotel chandeliers. The Grand Verdant Hotel was a place of quiet luxury, marble floors, polished wood counters, and a staff trained to make your stay feel effortless. It was also the last place anyone saw Rachel Monroe alive. Rachel, 32, was in town for a 3-day business conference. She arrived at 6:45 p.m., wheeling a single carry-on suitcase behind her. Surveillance cameras show her smiling faintly as she chats with the receptionist, signing her name with practiced ease before accepting the keycard for room 628. There is nothing in her demeanor to suggest fear, urgency, or danger, and that makes what follows all the more haunting. She takes the elevator, glances at her phone, and walks down the hall, her heels clicking against the patterned carpet. At 6:58 p.m., she swipes into her room. The door swings shut behind her. From that moment on, the door never opens again. Security footage, digital key logs, and even the emergency stairwell cameras confirm it. No one entered or exited room 628 from the moment Rachel stepped inside. The next morning, she failed to appear at her conference. By the afternoon, the front desk called her cell. No answer. At 6:30 p.m., nearly 24 hours after check-in, hotel security attempted to open her door. It was locked from the inside. When they finally got in, Rachel was on the floor. And she was dead. The cause of death will be revealed in the next part. The staff who entered room 628 described it as frozen in time. Nothing seemed overturned. Her suitcase was open but neatly packed, as though she hadn't fully unpacked. A half-drunk bottle of water sat on the desk, the cap placed beside it. Her phone was lying face down on the bed, plugged into the charger. Rachel's body was found near the writing desk, slumped sideways on the carpet. She wore the same outfit from the night before, her hair slightly mussed. There were no signs of forced entry, no broken locks, no tempered windows. The strangest detail: the windows in room 628 were sealed shut. They were the type that couldn't open at all, installed for safety and energy efficiency. The first theory police floated was a medical emergency. Heart attack, stroke, but the autopsy, completed 3 days later, revealed something far more chilling. Rachel had died from respiratory failure caused by a rare inhaled toxin. But how did such a toxin get into a locked, sealed room? And more importantly, who delivered it? The phrase locked room mystery isn't just for detective novels. It's a real investigative nightmare. The rules were simple here. No forced entry. Keycard data showed only Rachel's card used once. No secondary exits, no balconies, no adjoining doors. CCTV clean. No one entered the hallway after her. No evidence of tampering with ventilation. Maintenance logs were clear. Detective Elena Vargas, assigned to the case, quickly realized the killer must have set the stage before Rachel even arrived. The toxin could have been hidden, timed, or remotely released. But there was a risk. If the timing was wrong, the wrong guest could have been the victim. So why Rachel? A random target, or someone worth killing? Investigators pulled Rachel's phone records, travel bookings, and credit card transactions. She'd flown in from Chicago, booked the hotel 2 weeks in advance, and had dinner reservations that night, reservations she never made. Her texts were ordinary: a quick message to her sister about arriving safely, an email to her boss confirming her attendance at the next day's meeting. Nothing in her digital trail suggested fear or paranoia. But one text stood out, a deleted message, recovered from the cloud, timestamped 2 hours before check-in. I think I saw him again. Not sure if it's paranoia. Rachel's sister, Emily, told detectives that him could only mean Michael Brandt, Rachel's ex-boyfriend. Michael had a history, not of violence, but of unsettling persistence. After their breakup 2 years ago, he'd shown up at her work twice, left unwanted gifts, and sent her emails that grew stranger over time. The police interviewed Michael. He admitted to being in the city that week but denied seeing Rachel. His alibi? A work dinner at a nearby steakhouse from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m., an alibi partially confirmed by his colleagues. But one thing bothered Detective Vargas. Michael knew Rachel's favorite hotels, and the Grand Verdant was one of them. Surveillance footage became the investigation's cornerstone. Every hallway, elevator, and lobby angle was scrutinized. But cameras only covered public areas. That meant whoever entered room 628 before Rachel, if anyone did, could have done so without detection if they blended in with hotel operations. One clip from earlier that day showed a maintenance cart parked outside 628 for 7 minutes around 3 p.m. The staff log identified the cleaner as T. Alvarez. But when detectives asked to speak with Alvarez, the hotel's HR records showed no employee by that name. The autopsy identified the substance as phosgene gas, a chemical with a faint, musty odor, almost like hay. Lethal in small doses, phosgene has no taste and little warning before it begins to suffocate its victim from the inside. Its use is heavily restricted, and it's not something one simply buys online. Forensic sweeps of room 628 found traces of the gas in the ventilation unit, specifically in a removable filter panel that had been unscrewed and replaced. Whoever planted it had access to specialized equipment. In the course of their sweep, technicians discovered something strange. Behind the desk, on the baseboard, was a thin layer of dust, except for a small area where someone had traced a single letter, M. It could have been a coincidence, a random mark from moving furniture. But Emily Monroe insisted Rachel always signed things with her first initial when she was rushed. Had Rachel tried to leave a clue? Digging into the Grand Verdant's history, Vargas found 2 prior incidents in room 628. One was a suicide 10 years earlier. The other, a sudden death from unknown causes just 3 years ago. In both cases, no foul play was officially determined. If Rachel's case connected to those deaths, it meant the killer may have used this same room before, and perhaps knew its vulnerabilities. Cross-referencing guest records with the 2 previous incidents revealed one startling commonality. A man named Thomas Brandt, Michael's older brother, had stayed at the hotel during both earlier deaths. Thomas worked in industrial chemicals, with security clearance to restricted substances. If true, it meant Rachel's ex may not have been the killer, but the connection was still uncomfortably close. And Detective Vargas now feared this wasn't a one-time crime. It was a pattern, and Rachel was just the latest in a carefully chosen series. In the next part, we'll see how the investigation takes a dangerous turn when Vargas realizes she herself may have been watched inside the hotel. Detective Elena Vargas had stayed in many hotels during investigations, but there was something about the Grand Verdant that unsettled her. On the second night of her stay, she returned to her room to find the Do Not Disturb sign on her door, something she hadn't left there. Her laptop was exactly where she'd left it, but when she powered it on, the webcam indicator flashed for a second before shutting off. She checked the hallway camera footage for the past few hours, and there was a 30-minute gap. Not an error. Someone had deliberately disabled it. Vargas's focus shifted to the Brandt family. Michael Brandt, the ex-boyfriend, had always been the obvious suspect in Rachel's life. But Thomas Brandt, the older brother, was a man of precision. His employment records showed he'd worked on hazardous material containment systems for over a decade. His job gave him unrestricted access to phosgene and other dangerous gases, and more importantly, the knowledge of how to transport and conceal them. The 2 brothers hadn't been seen together publicly in over 5 years, but financial records revealed transfers, small amounts, consistent, almost like retainers. Forensics requested a deeper inspection of room 628's ventilation system. Behind the removable filter, they discovered a custom-fabricated canister about the size of a paperback novel. The mechanism was timed. It would release its contents slowly over several hours. The timer was manual, not digital, meaning it couldn't be traced electronically. But the tool marks on the screws matched a set found in a toolbox later recovered from a storage locker rented under Thomas Brandt's alias. A breakthrough came from an unexpected source, the minibar in Rachel's room. Every minibar item was fitted with a sensor that logged when it was moved. On the afternoon of Rachel's death, 2 bottles were lifted at 3:07 p.m., 7 minutes after the T. Alvarez maintenance cart appeared in the hallway. This data proved someone had been inside 628 before Rachel ever arrived, confirming Vargas's theory. The killer planted the device earlier, disguised as hotel staff. Emily Monroe, Rachel's sister, received a letter in the mail 2 days after the funeral. It was postmarked the day before Rachel died. Inside was a single sheet of paper with no signature. "He knows you're here. Leave now." The handwriting didn't match Michael's or Thomas's. Vargas suspected a third person, possibly an informant or someone within the hotel, had tried to warn Rachel. But the letter had been sent too late. Vargas interviewed the hotel's general manager again, pressing harder this time. At first defensive, the man eventually admitted that the Grand Verdant had off-the-record arrangements with certain long-term clients who were granted access to staff-only areas without sign-in. One of those clients, Thomas Brandt. The manager claimed Thomas was involved in security consulting and had even advised the hotel on emergency ventilation protocols years prior, meaning he knew every duct, vent, and blind spot in the building. Looking into hotels across the state, Vargas found 4 other unexplained deaths in sealed rooms over the past 12 years. The victims had no connection to each other, except for one detail. Each had stayed in a property where Thomas Brandt was registered as a guest within 48 hours of the incident. The method was eerily consistent: timed release of a toxin, no signs of entry, and a narrative that leaned toward natural causes unless a very thorough investigation was done. Vargas knew they needed Thomas to make a move. She arranged for Elena Monroe to give a public interview, stating that new evidence had been found linking Rachel's killer to other crimes. It was bait, designed to make Thomas paranoid and sloppy. 2 nights later, Vargas received word that someone had accessed a different room at the Grand Verdant under a false name. A security team moved in quietly. They found Thomas alone in the room, seated at the desk with a black duffel bag. Inside the bag was another custom canister, partially assembled. The toxin had not yet been loaded. When arrested, Thomas said little, except for one chilling line, directed at Vargas. "You think you've stopped me, but you haven't even met the one who taught me." It was a statement that hinted at something larger, a network, or perhaps a mentor who had perfected the art of killing without entry. Thomas was charged with multiple counts of murder. Michael Brandt was never proven to have been involved, though Vargas remained unconvinced. The mysterious letter writer was never identified. As for room 628, the Grand Verdant quietly renovated it, sealing off the old ventilation system entirely. But Vargas knew that in another city, another room, the method could return in the hands of someone else who knew the design. Rachel Monroe's story ended behind a locked door that no one opened again, and for Vargas, the question that haunted her wasn't just how it happened, but how many more times it already had.